Welcome back to the Reviving Christian Families podcast. I am so excited to just have a conversation with you guys about what generational trauma could actually look like being passed down from generation to generation and how we can break the cycle in your own family. So let's dive in. Hey, spouses. I know what it's like to be frazzled, overwhelmed, and stressed while managing all the tasks, balancing work schedules, raising children, and trying to grow closer to each other and the Lord. All the trauma and the shame cycles you can't seem to break out of are just the cherry on top, right? You know that you want to make a change, that you need something to be different, and you crave a happier, healthier lifestyle, but you don't know where to start, how to get there, and you just feel stuck. That's why I'm here showing up every week with these podcast episodes to give you the knowledge and momentum you need to get unstuck and begin healing the generational trauma in your family. Let's take off those trauma patterns and the lies of the enemy and put on the armor and strength of the Lord. We are building a better future for the next generation and every generation to come. And the healing for the next generations begins with us. So, wives, grab your husband, and husbands, grab your wife a snack, and let's dive in and do the work. Hey guys, how was your weekend? This past weekend for me was a little bit of a reset, and it was 100% what I needed, and I'm very grateful and blessed that I had it. So yeah, come over to the Facebook group and let me know what your guys' weekend was like. Jump in on some of our posts in there. I really want to get to know you guys and get a feel of like where you're at. So I would love to see you over there. All right, now let's just start talking about this. Today's going to be very conversational. Like, even though you guys aren't here to talk back to me, obviously, that's why we have the Facebook group and why you guys can email me at any point, come over to Instagram. But it is nice to have more of like a story flow sometimes in the podcast because I know I can be a little like bullet point type of girl where I'm like, let's get to the point, what's the goods? And I think this is more gonna be one of those days where we just kind of chat and talk about what does this look like. It's more of a giving examples type of day, walking you through real life situations. So I think you guys are really gonna enjoy this one, and it's kind of gonna piggyback off of some of my like beginning episodes on generational trauma, but I'm gonna go a little deeper and like give you guys like those real life application, real life examples. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about my own story and what this has looked like for me. So I'm excited to dive in. The main point of what we're going to be talking about today is really just that generational trauma can be broken and that healing begins with awareness and intentional actions. So, what is generational trauma? I went into depth on this in some of the earlier episodes. If you want to go back and look at those, or if you are in the Facebook group, if you're not, come and join us. But if you are, we do have an episode vault that you can get in there, and it's just like a spreadsheet with all of our episodes and what category they fall into and some of the like main points. So it's very easy, and I have all the links for like whatever freebies or the Facebook group, like they're all in there too from all the episodes. So if you guys do ever want a quick reference, like you could go in there and watch all of the episodes that I have on one topic if like you're maybe really struggling in that area or you're really curious about it. So I encourage you guys to use that tool. It is there for you. Okay, so I'm not going to go as in depth because, like I said, I've already done that in past episodes, but I do want to touch on what is generational trauma for anyone who doesn't know. And essentially, generational trauma is the passing of trauma from one generation to the next. And this could be just one generational passing, so from parent to child, or it could be multiple, so from parent to grandchild to great grandchild, etc., and so on until someone breaks the cycle. And what this entails can be both DNA, like down to your genetic makeup type of trauma being passed down, but it can also be habitual. So, like learning habits, children pick up what they see very quickly. And so it's kind of a mix of nature and nurture. So that's how I like to look at it. We talk more on the nurture part because obviously there's only so much that we can do about our nature part, besides just like taking good care of ourselves, which we talk about in the nurture part. So um it's very, yeah, hopefully that gives you a good understanding. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say nature versus nurture, I'm talking about, a scientific argument that, or debate, I guess I should say, that is often argued in science. Like, was it a genetic, like, makeup, the way that they were born type of situation, or was it a nurture, like the environment they grew up in type of situation? And what had a bigger impact? Was it one or the other or both? And so that is what I was referencing there. Okay, so now let's talk about, really essentially what I'm saying is that there's patterns of behaviors and there's beliefs, in that they're cyclical, right? They go in a circular motion, and these things get repeated. And so we're going to talk about how they get repeated, why they get repeated, why it's so hard to break them, and how we can recognize these patterns. So we're going to start there, and then we'll dive into some encouragement and some actionable steps. But first, I want to give you guys some examples so you can really understand in depth. And I'm going to start with my own example because I have gotten to tell you guys a little bit about me, but I haven't got to dive into some of my stories yet as much as I would like to. So, the way that this looked in my family is that there was there was a lot of different cycles that we could probably pick apart here. I mean, there's really a lot in one family tree when you look at my family, as is the truth with many families, I think. So, I don't think we're necessarily unique in that sense, but there's definitely been a lot of a trauma effect in our family tree. And so, my grandpa on my dad's side, I'm not really sure what his entire life was like. I know that he was a clockmaker, and I know that him and my grandma, excuse me, him and my grandma were together for a while. And there was never a for sure, but there was definitely some speculation and reason to believe that my grandpa was abusive to my grandma. And I didn't find this out till I was a little bit older. And so that cycle continued. Then my dad, he pretty much went right into the Marines as a teenager. And then he married my mom, and they, they had three older kids, which are my older siblings. Not older kids. They had three kids who are my older siblings. And my dad, he had some trauma while he was in the service for sure. And he doesn't like to talk about it a lot, so I don't know all the nitty-gritty details. All I know is that he did lose someone that he loved, and that was important to him. And when he came back, I wasn't alive, obviously, but from everything that I've been told, he really wasn't the same. And he had substance abuse problems. He was a closet drinker, and so when he wasn't drinking, he was very nice, an amazing person, very gentle, very caring, a good father, a good husband. But then he would drink, and he wouldn't do it around people. So like if you just knew him day to day or like in a professional setting, you would never know that he drank. But he would, go and drink, and then he would come back. And he continued this pattern of abuse with my mother. And so it got to the point where she left him, and they got divorced because she just couldn't, continue living in that. And so, and then essentially right after their divorce. He and my biological mother and they met. So this is kind of confusing. Hopefully you guys can follow. So um my mom, I say she's my mom, she adopted us later, so we'll get to that part. But she and my dad had 3 kids, and so then those are my 3 older siblings, and then the divorce finalized all of that. My dad had gotten into drugs sometime towards the end of their marriage or during their divorce. I'm not sure of the exact timing, but essentially him and my biological mother met from their drug dealer, from what I understand. And they kind of just got pregnant with me right away, essentially, is how it's told. And so then my dad, he didn't believe that I was actually his. And so that cycle of abuse continued with my biological mother, especially since they had been, drinking and doing drugs together. And so that continued even while I was in the womb. From everything that I've been told, my biological mother claims that she was not using anything while I was in the womb. Obviously, I cannot confirm or deny that. I was too young to tell. And so then after I came out, I was like the type of baby where it was just undeniable that I was my dad's. Like, I looked just like him. Like, it's actually creepy, like, to see the pictures of him holding me while I was a baby. Like, the resemblance is insane. And so part of me thinks that God did that, like, just to protect me and to protect my biological mother, because like, it's genuinely freaky how much we look alike. Anyway, so um that happened. My parents kind of went back and forth. From what I've been told, is like one would get clean and then the other would be struggling and kind of suck the other back in, and then it would go vice versa. And so I actually remember being left home alone for the first time at a very young age. Like, my sister is a year and a half younger than me, and I remember she was a toddler. She was probably 3, so I was getting close to that 5 age, but not quite there, probably. Obviously, our memories that young are kind of distorted, but I just remember being very young, and my dad, like, having to leave to go get my mom. And I'm not sure what she was doing, where she was. I just know that, like, he was freaked out and he was upset and he had to go get her, and he left us there. And we just kind of sat in behind the front door. It was like late at night, and I just remember crying and feeling like all alone. And so there was a lot of uh, very early traumatic moments in my childhood. And, my older sister on my mom's side, she's the only sibling that I have on my biological mother's side. She was kind of in and out of the home, so she would see stuff, and she's told us some of the things from our childhood as well. And just overall big picture, I'll just give you the bullet points here. It was very unstable. It was very unclean. Like, we were not a clean household. I don't know about my biological mom for sure, but I know for sure my dad was a hoarder, and like there was just a lot of junk, and it was just like dirty because, their moods and their lifestyle habits were fluctuating, and you never knew if they were going to be reliable, if they were going to be clean and sober. And so I do remember spending a lot of weekends like at my grandma's too, and getting to just to be with her. And I just remember loving being with her, and she would take us to Awanas, and we got to have like baths with the little plastic toy boats and just all the grandma stuff. She'd spoil us with food. We'd eat rhubarb fresh out of her backyard, and we always had special moments with her. And then when we went home, it was like normal. Like, we didn't necessarily notice that we were living in chaos, but we just, we were kids. We loved our parents. We loved our normal. And so we went through all that. There was moments where like our parents would be relapsing, and I would like go up and tell my older half sibling when she was there, like I smell like mom and dad are doing that funny stuff again. Like I can smell it, and like she would like go and, probably yell at them, use curse words, get upset. It was a very interesting dynamic for sure. And so that happened. But then the cycle was broken because at age 5, and my grandma had just passed away, probably like months before this. It wasn't very long before, at max, it was probably a year before we went in foster care, but I'm pretty sure it was less than that. And, we got taken away. There was a night where my dad injured himself. Cooking dinner is the story that we have been kind of going with. There was like two different stories that went back and forth for a while that I was like, well, did this happen? Did this happen? Anyways, my biological mother freaked out and called 911, and then my dad was very upset. I just remember like being distraught because he was walking around the house and, he was bleeding from his hand, and he was kind of just like dripping blood. So, like, trigger warning a little bit. Sorry, I should have said that before, but like, there will be some stuff in here that's like, like, I try not to get too gory, but I just remember being upset because there was blood on the carpet. Like, I'm 5 years old and I was concerned because there was blood on the carpet. And it was just like, to me, that was the most traumatic part. I'm like, oh no, you're ruining our carpet. And that night we pretty much were told that we were being taken away. And I don't know if I'm just remembering this wrong, but I swear that they told us that they were coming back to get us the next day. But it could have been that they just said they were coming back to get our stuff the next day. Like our parents had time to pack up our stuff. I don't know. I just remember them saying like that they needed to have our stuff ready by then. And I remember at some point we went on a ride, and I think we went in a police car. I'm not 100% sure. And then we kind of like waited at DHS, I think, for a placement for a little while. And then I remember like going into our first foster home. It was very traumatizing, even though like it sounds weird to say because it was cleaner, it was nicer. It was an amazing, gorgeous home in the middle of the country in a very nice area. And it was traumatizing, though, as a child, as a 5-year-old who had never known anything like that, to walk in there with strangers, be away from everyone that I know and love. And, I'd already known loss at a young age from losing my grandma, even though I didn't fully, I wasn't able to wrap my head around it fully. I don't remember feeling like fully sad. But I think it was just, the whole thing was just shocking. It was just like a lot of unexpected and scary events that had happened so close together in my life. And so there was obviously things that like we had witnessed too that added into that, but I don't have time to dive into every story. But so then we were in foster care for 2 years. We moved between one and two. We moved from one foster home to another and then back to the first. And they almost adopted us. And then my dad's ex-wife, who became our mom, she had tried to get us and ended up winning. And then we moved in with her, and we were kind of trying to build this new life. But I never really got like the help that I needed after all of that to like really break it down. And I had intense trust issues as a child after going through all that. And so I got a few years where I just kind of shut it all out, and I tried to have a normal childhood. I tried to get to know this new person I was living with and get to know my new routines. Things were neat, they were clean. It was a stable environment. I had to start a new school, and at this point, I was used to bouncing around. I was used to change, but as a child, you want that consistency and that sense of safe. And so it took me a while. I like started to kind of adjust, and then we moved, and I don't know necessarily if it was the move that triggered it, but after like two moves, um to get closer to family and kind of get settled in that new town because we had, like a transition house. And then we got a house that was a little more reasonable for us, and a, a little bit nicer, needed less work. And so we were there, and I just remember I was probably around age 10, and it all kind of hit me. So I was adopted around, I think it was a month before I turned 8, if I'm remembering correctly. And so, it was those couple years where I was just kind of blocked everything that happened out, and then around age 10 it all like came catapulting back onto me, and I had no like way of verbalizing that was hard for me to explain. I didn't really even understand what was happening in the moment. Now looking back, I can see it. Like, I could only push it off so long. Eventually I was going to have to deal with it. But at the moment, I didn't know what it was. And, I was starting to hit that age where like I'm going into like pre-puberty or like puberty, and my hormones are changing. And so like I was going through all that, and then on top of that having stacks of trauma that I hadn't dealt with yet. And so I didn't have like a therapist, a counselor. I didn't really even have someone in my life where I felt like it was safe to talk to these things about, like, because I said before, I had intense trust issues. So maybe there were people in my life who I could have had these conversations with and it would have been safe. But from my perspective, it wasn't either way. Like I didn't genuinely feel safe with anyone to have those conversations. And I had never been like, I'd never built a relationship with a professional like therapist or anything to this point that had felt safe. I believe we had a counselor while we were in foster care, but it was a very again, just there was no trust. I did not trust any of them. I found it hard to open up to them. And so, whether that person was actually safe or not to talk to about it, I can't tell you that because obviously my memory is skewed. But I know that in the moment, I did not feel safe talking to them. So, um, that all kind of added up. And then from there, it just got really rough. I mean, I didn't know that I was feeling depressed at the moment, but looking back, I do. I can see that. I went into this depression. I thought it was just, everyone I think around me thought it was just normal preteen stuff where I was just kind of excluding myself, diving into my electronics, that type of stuff. But um, looking back, I'm like, no, no, that was not normal. I did not want to be around people. I didn't want to come out of my room. I had a hard time cleaning, keeping my room up. I just like got to the point where I just felt so defeated, so low, so incapable of doing anything because I just felt immobile, like stuck from day to day. I had no interest in doing anything. And so I don't I don't really think anyone in my life necessarily noticed the signs of it either. I don't think anyone would have thought in that moment, "Oh, she's depressed," because no one knew what I was going through. But I just remember having that one night where it all hit me and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, my parents didn't love me." And from that moment on, like my life was 10 times harder, like carrying around this weight of feeling like my parents abandoned me and like they didn't love me. And then at the same time, there was probably a lot of ways where I like would take that out on my adoptive mother because of the pain from my um biological parents. And then there was also things that like she would do and I would take it and internalize it as, oh, she doesn't love me either. Oh, she doesn't care about me. She doesn't want to hear my opinion. She doesn't want to, listen to me. Like, and so it was all these little things building up. And I'm at this age where like I'm just struggling, even to learn, like I'm still trying to learn normal communication, normal relationships, how things function, trying to build friendships. And that was something I always struggled with too. Like I never had friends who could understand what I was going through. I never felt like I was good at making friends. And so I never really had like a friend that stuck. There was maybe one or two that I had here or there for like a year, maybe 2 years max. And it always ended for different reasons. And so I was lonely in like more ways than one. And so, just on top of normally trying to function and learn to be a growing, like preteen into teenager, on top of that, I was dealing with all this stuff. So, as you can imagine, and if you've been through something like this, I'm sure you get what I'm saying, but it was overwhelming and I had no idea how to explain it. I didn't know how to communicate it, I didn't know what it was called. It was it was intense for lack of better words. And so from there, things just kind of got worse in my home life. My mom was a single parent at this time, and pretty much through my entire time with her, that was true. And we were kind of like going through these periods of change a lot. And I was already like used to change, but it's still hard for a child to change. And we had ended up like, my mom got a foster license, and so we were getting foster placement. So then on top of just me and my sister dealing with our own stuff and trying to learn and grow, and you know we had to kind of get to know her, right? Because she wasn't really in our lives very much for the first 7 years of my life. So that was an adjustment. And then we get, I think it was maybe 3 years later, or maybe a little less than that, then we started fostering other kids. And so then we had to learn that new dynamic. And this is right around the time that I was like dealing with all the depressive moods and stuff. And so it was a lot for us. And I remember just feeling like we don't want to do this anymore. And my mom kind of just told us like that wasn't an option, and that we were being selfish and we didn't want to give all these kids a home, and they were going to end up in these worse horrible situations if we didn't take them. And so she kind of like guilt tripped us into just dealing with it. And it was a lot. There was a lot involved, because now we are having to pick up the slack, help take care and clean up messes. And it's pretty much like go to school, come home, clean, homework, bed. And like I was already struggling to just want to do anything. And then, there was all that on top. So that strained things. And then going into the teenagers, there was a lot more that happened. I mean, a lot more. And I don't even have time to dig into all that in the episode. But what I saw and throughout my teenage years is that um my my mom, my adoptive mom, she was affected by everything that happened in her childhood, with like having strained relationships with her parents and feeling like her parents did not love her well, did not choose her first ever. And then also like on top of that, what had happened in her marriage and like being married to my dad, and then she had another relationship that did not go well and she was cheated on. And so all that added up to being in not being all of that added up to affecting our relationship, our childhood, and that whole process. And so I can see now, looking back, how that all trickled down to us. And I can also see how the trickle down from my biological dad's, from his parents to him to his kids, and even what I've seen in like my older siblings, some of those things trickle down. And then how that affected my mother and then us. And so it just, the whole process. And then I can also see a little bit of that on my biological mom's side, because she never knew her dad, and her her mom was not ever in like a healthy, stable relationship. So then she watched that, and then that trickled down to her. She repeated those things, and that cycle continued. And then unfortunately, that cycle of being with someone abusive and being in these toxic relationships and having children and staying with men who were unhealthy continued down to my sister on her side. And so there are people in my family who have continued this cycle, continued cycles of divorce, cycles of abuse, cycles of cheating or being cheated on, cycles of parenting unhealthily. I mean, we could talk about so many different cycles, so many spirals that have continued from generation to generation because the trauma of one generation does affect the next generation. And even when we heal, I mean, there may still be some of that little bit. But at that point, it's not going to be as big of a deal. It's something that will probably end up just being a growth propeller, something that like you can work through and your child will learn. Like, there's normal things that children need to learn. But when we don't handle the trauma and we don't deal with what it's caused in us as parents, then we unknowingly or maybe knowingly let it affect our behavior, let it affect our parenting, let it affect our marriage, let it affect our home, let it affect our work. It affects all areas of our lives, and our children watch all of that. And no matter how well we think we're hiding it from them, it affects them. And those things can be passed down because children don't do what you say, they do what you do. They will. That is how they're designed. They're designed to learn by watching. And so there's no like cheat sheet. There's no secret workaround. The way to train your children to have healthy marriages and healthy parenting techniques and healthy lives is to be the example for them. It is to be a positive example. And so if we aren't doing that, then that should be our ultimate goal. And we should be doing whatever is necessary to get there. And a lot of that is going to be the steps that we're going to dive into right now. So that's going to be healing your marriage. So working together, you can try to do this on your own. If you're in a place where you have no extra finances, that may be your only option. And that's certainly where my husband and I started, is just working on stuff by ourselves. But I really do encourage you to hire a counselor, a coach, a couples therapist, anything like that to really help you guys in that. There's even coaches for parenting. There is, you could go to therapy in just a general sense to work through your past trauma and how that those things are affecting you now. I am a life coach, so I'm a little biased in saying that I really recommend getting a life coach if you're looking to get to that next step, like the next right step, and improve your life moving forward. And I do have free Voxer coaching. So Voxer is like, it's an app, or you can use it on a website, like on a computer. And it doesn't need like immediate attention. It's like you could walk away and come back, and whatever I told you in that voice message or text, or if I sent like a PDF or something, it's all going to be there. It's almost like a messenger, but it's more walkie-talkie-ish. Like, the stuff doesn't delete after you listen to it, which I know in like some of the apps, like I think Messages did that for a while. I don't know if they still do, but like the audio doesn't delete. And if I were like talking to you, you could listen in real time if you wanted on the app, like as if we are literally walkie-talking. Or you can come back when it's more convenient for you and listen to it not in real time, and it'll save in there. And so it's just a great tool. I love it. And so I do offer that, so you can get pretty much a whole day. So like from the time that I'm awake starting my work day till the time that I'm like right before I get ready for bed. So pretty much after dinner, that's when like would be our last messages in there. So I do offer that. It is a great way just to try out life coaching, see if it's something that could be a good fit for you, without any actual commitment of money or a big time. Because I do offer free coaching calls 1-to-1 on Zoom, but I know that's can feel like a big commitment for people who are more introverted like me. So I'll link those both below. And then the other thing I just want to say is spending time with God is probably one of the most important things you can do to really set a good example and to change what's going on in your mind and in your habits and in your heart. Having a daily Bible time with the Lord has been one of the most life-changing things that I've ever done. And for the longest time, I couldn't get consistent with it. But now that I am, I have seen tremendous growth, like probably 10 times to what I used to see in my spiritual life. And so if you're not doing that already, I really encourage you to. And it's probably going to be the most life-changing thing that you could do. And sometimes we need an accountability partner. So if you have a friend, a coach, a spouse, someone who can do this with you and keep you on track, that would be very good for you. So, and then I just wanted to leave you guys with some spiritual encouragement through a scripture and just remind you guys that God is the ultimate healer and he knows exactly what the problem is and exactly how it needs to be fixed, and he invites us in to let him do that. And so I just encourage you to hand this over to him if you have not. And I want to read you a scripture from Exodus 20:5-6. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me. But this is the important part, guys. But showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. And then under as a footnote, it says that this could also read, but showing steadfast love to the thousandth generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. And so one of my favorite worship songs is the one that says, may your favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family and their children and their children and their children. That is one of my favorite songs, and we actually had our family sing that over us as a prayer during our 1 year reception, because we eloped at the courthouse and then we did a reception a year later. So it was very beautiful, and I love to listen to that song. I think it is almost like all encompassing of our ministry here. Is just we want to break off the curse of those who hate the Lord, of those who walk in the ways of sin. We want to break that off of our family, and we want to step into this promise of God showing his steadfast love to those who love him and keep his commandments all the way to the 1,000th generation. So if you are ready to heal your family and you are ready to step into that promise and work with the Lord and work with an accountability partner, I would love to just see you on one of my free coaching calls or my free Voxer day and get to know you and see if we'd be a good fit. So thank you guys for listening to this. I hope that it was very helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.